Support comes from the Arizona Inn, a four-diamond, family-owned historic resort hotel and restaurant on Elm Street near the U of A. Information is at arizonainn.com.
Hello everyone, I'm Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel, and we're here to talk Zona politics. Joining me today to talk about the recently completed legislative session are two state lawmakers, State Senator Andrea D'Alessandro and State Rep Randy Freeze. Thank you both for joining me today.
Pleasure.
So the big story at the end of the session was certainly the Red for Ed movement, the teacher walkout. Governor Ducey came out with a promise to increase wages by 20% by 2020. He provided enough dollars by his calculation to provide a 10% raise this year. Senator D'Alessandro, do you think these raises will materialize, and is it enough?
Well, I think some raises will materialize, but I do think some of his revenue projections are rosy revenue, and so I'm not 100% sure about that. And the budget also depends on not increasing any discretionary spending for the next 3 years, so that's one of the other problems. I'm still concerned with the disabilities community because they did some one-time funding of $13 million, and it's not in the second and third year of the budget that we worked on. So there are concerns, and every school is different. I have a district that has about 100 students, and then I have big districts in Nogales and Tucson, and there are a lot of needs in the schools besides the teacher pay. So it's going to be really hard. We have to be careful who we vote for school boards, because I think they're going to be the deciders on how the money will be spent.
Randy, your thoughts on how the education funding debate played out?
Well, thank goodness for Red for Ed. I'm glad the teachers stood up for themselves and got our attention. That's exactly what it took. As you remember, 2 days before the walkout, the governor said there's no money. There's only enough money for 1% that we promised you last year. The walkout was looming, and suddenly he found money for 9% more this year. I agree with Senator D'Alessandro. Absolutely, there will be some raises. Will they be the 9% raises for teachers? Not everywhere. School boards have a lot of other decisions to make: fix the leaking roof, fix the failing floorboards, the air conditioner. Also, there's the classified employees. They also deserve to have salary increases. So not every teacher will see that 9% this coming year. And it's unfortunate that he messages it that way. He should have messaged this as a reinvestment in public education, because that's what it really was. And it's going to be up to the school boards to decide where that reinvestment gets spent.
The teachers are saying there needs to be some kind of dedicated funding mechanism. And Randy, do you agree?
Absolutely. I brought that up at the beginning of the year in the Joint Appropriations Committee, where I asked the OSBB leader, Matt Grease. I said I'd like to see a dedicated funding stream for DAA. The governor made a very priority in January in his executive budget to bring back $100 million to DAA. Remember, he cut that $100 million his first year as governor. He's bringing that back, and then promised more increases to reinstate DAA back to its pre-cut levels of $380-some million. I'd like to see that money a protected funding stream, not coming from the general fund. Now, the general fund needs to fund the formula, but to have DAA protected would be really a good step forward.
And Senator D'Alessandro, dedicated funding source?
Yes, well, we did extend the 301 funding, but that doesn't really solve a problem. That just keeps the status quo. And because it's not voter protected, they can tinker with it, and that's one of my concerns. And I am supporting the Invest in Education initiative, and I'm out there already getting signatures and working hard to get that on the ballot, because that is a dedicated funding source for the top 1% of individual income earners.
That's what an income tax on the top 1% in the country.
Yes, and it
or in the state.
And it goes 60% goes to teacher raises, and they define teacher, they define support staff, and I think it'll pass, because there are a lot of people who are willing to pay a bit more, especially in light of the fact that they're going to get a break with the federal tax. So I think it'll be a win-win for everything, and educators finally have had their voice heard. They've had a civics lesson, and they all have family, friends, and colleagues that they're talking to now.
Well, I imagine 99% outweighs 1% when it comes to voting your pocketbook. But
Right.
Your thoughts on that initiative?
Well, it is a progressive tax in our income tax structure. When you look at sales tax and income tax together, the people of lower income tend to pay a larger proportion of their take-home pay in sales tax. So this having this adjustment on the higher income earner with an income tax sort of tries to smooth that line out. It's still more burdensome on the lower income families as far as proportion of income that's being paid. So I also do support this, and because it is a dedicated funding stream for education.
And Randy, as part of the budget, there was a shift of about $17 million from the state to TUSD taxpayers because of a technical change in how property taxes are calculated. I don't want to get into the details, but it has to do with the desegregation funds. And was this a reasonable request to ask TUSD to take over these payments of the desegregation money?
First, remember, this was not in the governor's initial budget proposal in January. This was not in the budget proposal that was being negotiated within the Republican caucus right before Red for Ed and the teacher walkout. It showed up in the last budget proposal that included the teacher raises, and it was sort of just in there. We asked, what is this? And basically what it is a shift from primary property tax to secondary property tax. Primary property tax is protected by the Constitution to be capped at 1% of your home's value. That's called the homeowner's rebate. So now shifting the deseg tax from primary to secondary takes that homeowner's rebate cap away. So Tucson TUSD homeowners aren't being protected by that 1% homeowner's rebate cap. So that's a $17 million shift.
And your thoughts on that one, Andrea?
Well, I think that not only does it hurt the people who live in TUSD, who are mainly Democrats, it also hurts the businesses that operate in TUSD or the people who are landowners and have renters. And so it's going to negatively impact the entire economy. And since the Republicans were for it, I think some of them are going to have a harder time getting elected, especially when people learn about the increase in their property tax.
And quickly, if I may, Jim,
Sure.
this is a desegregation issue. TUSD is under a federal order for these desegregation programs, so that they have a special master. There's things in place that extra monies are needed to pay for. But clearly, once we come out from under that, we can start to bring that levy down. But to shift that to the homeowners right now, I think, is a bad choice.
And I want to talk about higher ed. Pima Community College, still no state funding for our local community college. Higher ed got a little bit of a boost, but a big chunk of that was earmarked for the so-called freedom schools. Andrea, your thoughts on that?
Well, it is ridiculous that we're putting millions of dollars into the freedom schools at U of A and ASU. I just happened to write down the reserve that the ASU Freedom School had. It was $9,589 and $5,589,451. That's a lot of money, and I look at that reserve. So we gave them more money. So they have money, and U of A also has a little bit more than $2 million. When I look at, and I visit public schools a lot, and I see dirty books that have been around for 25, 30, 40 years that are taped together. And freedom schools are not in the Constitution, but to improve and maintain the K-12 is, and to make university as near to free as possible. So this really irks me a lot.
And we should probably say what the freedom schools are for viewers out there, but they're basically a division within the universities that are funded by the Koch brothers and have a sort of a libertarian approach to teaching. And Randy, your thoughts on higher ed spending?
Well, we see the freedom schools budget line increase every year, and it seems to be part of the budget negotiations to happen within the Republican Party in order to get certain members on the budget. So certain members will say, well, if you give the freedom schools more money, I'll go ahead and vote yes on the budget package. And that's what this is. When the governor tweeted out we have a deal, what he meant was we have a deal within the Republican caucus. There were no teachers at the table. There were no representatives of the teachers at the table, and there were no Democrats at the table to come up with this deal. And that's unfortunate, because we can come up with a better budget when we're more inclusive.
Yeah. And Jim, just last night I was at the Job Path graduation, which is always such an inspiring, people who are very low income now are graduating with certificates and degrees and making $38,000 more a year on the average, more than they did before. And I think it's a crime that Pima and Maricopa community colleges haven't been funded at all by the state, because they're economic drivers. They have revised curricula. We have a lot of aviation here. They have aviation mechanics, all kinds of engineers, medical people, nurses, and dental therapists and things. So it's really a shame that they haven't had the funding in several years now. So we keep fighting for it year after year, and we will not give up.
Right. I want to talk about school safety and gun violence. Randy, you're a trauma surgeon. You were there on the mass shooting in Tucson in 2011, treating a number of victims, including Gabby Giffords. And I know you have a personal connection to the impacts of gun violence. Governor Ducey came out with his school safety plan, did not pass out of the legislature. What were your thoughts on what Governor Ducey proposed?
Well, again, this is another example of where the agenda was driven from outside of the executive and, in fact, outside of the legislature. The Arizona and Phoenix, Tucson students made it known that they wanted a better plan than what the governor proposed. And when the governor made his language available to us, we were quite clear with the executive staff that this is not a good plan. There are plenty of problems with it, sometimes leading to more issues with gun safety than solving. So we did not support the plan from right out. We asked to sit at the table and negotiate. We asked for comprehensive background checks. How can you tell someone that you have to turn in your weapons? You can't have one, but you can go around the corner to the gun show and buy another weapon without a background check, and you've already been told that you're dangerous. We've already been found that you're dangerous, but you can still go buy another gun. We talked about banning bump stocks. That was something that the students actually requested for gun safety. So the plan had plenty of holes in it, and it was actually, my opinion was actually caused more problems than it solved. And the Giffords Association came out quite quickly, also condemning the plan as poorly put together.
Andrew, you're on the same page there?
I agree, and a lot of the educators and the youth were in the gallery in the Senate listening to sensible, simple, democratic amendments that were routinely just shot down. I had one for an extra excise tax targeted to gun safety programs and things like that. We also had background checks and the bump stocks. And so the educators and the young people got a lesson in civics that will be with them for a long time.
I imagine
If I may
so.
highlight real quickly,
Yeah, sure.
Jim, the plan was not, they did not include the students, they did not include the Democrats, but they did include the NRA. And
Yes.
the NRA was at the table, vetted the plan to make the Republicans members comfortable, because he had a hard time in the House, even getting Republicans comfortable for different reasons.
Right.
Yeah, no, it seemed like, especially the provisions that would allow family members to, or other community members to report somebody to potentially take their weapons away was a sticking point for Republicans.
And the language got further watered down as it moved the process. If you remember, his first plan included gun safety, safe storage measures. If you were not storing your weapon safe and a child got it, there were going to be penalties. It initially included CCW changes, concealed carry permit permits changes. Those went away after the NRA got involved. And then it got even further watered down by saying family members can no longer request a hearing, it has to be just police. So as it moved the process, it got further watered down in desperate efforts of getting more Republicans on board, but didn't work.
Couldn't even do that. And Andrea, one of Governor Ducey's big agenda items was water law reform, and it did not really go anywhere this session. But what do you think about what they were proposing?
Well, I am the ranking member of the Senate Natural Resources, Energy, and Water, and there was a battle, and it was the Democrats and the Republicans actually on one side, and the governor wanting to do a power grab. We met many times with the CAP board, and they were, willing to work with the state, but they're responsible for the vast majority of the water that gets supplied to Tucson and Phoenix and Pinal County also. And people generally like the idea of having 15 elected people in the 3 counties rather than someone appointed by the governor. So there are water lawyers, there are professors who are experts, and then there are some normal people, but they're very well informed, very committed, because and I'm also very frustrated that we didn't work on a drought contingency plan. It is very dry. Near my district, going down to Santa Cruz County, there were fires last night. It's very dry, and people need to conserve as much as they can, and the state needed to have a better plan.
What did you think of what Governor Ducey was proposing on the water front?
Yeah, he was pretty strong in his State of the State at the beginning, the one voice sort of phrase. But what that meant to me was right now the way Arizona deals with water is we have CAWCD, or the Central Arizona Project Board, and then we have DWR. DWR is mostly groundwater, and then CAP or CAWD is mostly surface water, and they're kind of, peers. And then we do come to the table with the upper basin states and the lower basin states with one voice, but it first comes with meeting here. And I got the impression he kind of wanted to elevate DWI above CWCD, which we were very cautious about, and not only the Democrats, but also the Republicans in the House. The bills that moved forward, one of them was actually vetoed by the governor, sending a message that this is not the bill I want. It was a good idea, the bill that was sent to him, but he vetoed it, kind of sending a message, this is not what I want. And he didn't get what he wanted.
And, in previous years, we've seen a power grab. They've increased the Supreme Court from five members, and it's costing us millions of dollars. There was no need for it. So they defied all kinds of logic. The Supreme Court wasn't asking for more members. So it's just another power grab by the governor.
Andrea, the state of the roads, common complaint that we hear in these parts, some legislation that would have allowed Pima County to ask voters for a sales tax did not make it through. What should the state be doing to provide more dollars for road construction?
Well, I would prefer that we up the HERF, the Highway User Revenue Fund, but the Republicans are not going to vote for a tax increase. What we did, it wasn't an issue in the House with the vehicle license tax. Money from the HERF funds hasn't been used for the roads for a long time. There have been sweeps, and there's also been funding of about $100 million that has gone to fund the highway patrol. So this year, Bob Worsley was one of the proponents for increasing the vehicle license tax. Got through the House pretty easily, but when it got to the Senate, they said we're going to put a little bit extra in, and that will have about $42 to $60 million that can go to education. So Bob Worsley came to the Democrats and said, we need your support. So without that, it couldn't have passed. I don't like it as much as I would like a gas tax, but I also feel it is better than a sales tax.
Your thoughts on road funding and what we should be doing?
Well, I mean, it's the state's responsibility to make sure we have a great infrastructure, which is, of course, roads and railways and other things, water, technology, things like that. But the HERF, as Senator D'Alessandro, thank you for some reason, I'm sorry, Andrea, mentioned, the local share of the HERF fund was held harmless again this year, as well as last year. What's suffering is the state part of the HERF funds, which have continued to be swept. And the idea behind the vehicle license fee increase that was in the House sponsored by Mr. Campbell, which I supported, it generated money to pay for highway patrol, to then free up money to fund that state share. So it's one way around getting these state funds out there to fix the highways that we need to do.
And what about the idea of giving Pima County this authority to say, hey, voters, do you want to have a half-cent sales tax or some combination with what's already there with the RTA to fix local streets? Good idea to give Pima County that permission?
Well, absent the state doing the right thing, yes. But the problem with that is then Pima County can do it. But what about Yuma County or Yavapai County? Or, the state needs to do its job.
My district is pretty rural because I represent Arivaca and Sassabee as well as rural parts in Santa Cruz County, and they are like 20 years behind in their road work, and so it really is a state issue.
And Randy, the lawmakers did a bipartisan effort to address the opioid crisis. You're a doctor. What did you think of the package that ended up getting passed?
The package had some problems, but I fully supported it. And let me also say, Jim, I want to commend the governor's office for the way they handled this. This was done very well. The first thing in my 4 years there that I really want to say, this is what we should be doing over and again. The governor's office came to us as the Democratic caucus and said, this is the language that we're thinking about. They showed it to us before the language was put into the system. They asked us what we didn't like. They asked us what we liked. They asked us what we'd like to change. We told them very specifically we wanted to see the Good Samaritan piece in there, and the governor was all about that. He supported that. And then we asked
That's where someone, if they're with somebody who is having an opioid issue, can call without fear
and it can be
of ending
mitigated.
up having charges.
Exactly. In order to get some Republicans comfortable with that, he had to put limitations on it. He sunsetted it in 5 years, things like that, meaning in 5 years it will go away. But we figure we'll have some data showing that it's working. Other states, there's data showing that it actually saves lives. That got in there. That helped us. We also asked for $10 million in a fund to help people that are underinsured or uninsured get access to addiction services. Initially, he didn't have any money. Initially, the program was all about prevention, which is very good, but you also have another facet of who's addicted today, and how do we slow down that process? How do we help those people? And that's what we asked for. He gave it to us. There were some other problems with it, but we felt like this is compromise, this is negotiation, this is how it should be working, and we all got on board. Now, if you watch closely, the Republicans had a lot more problems with this bill. They all voted for it, but in their caucus, they really beat it up and had a problem with it. But they all voted for it in the end. Everybody, I think, voted for that bill. And it needs to be tweaked and changed. Some of the hospitals were uncomfortable. ARMA was able to help them get comfortable with some of the things we were doing. People that are currently on high doses continue to get those doses that they need. It's the new people that have new exposure that are limited.
You're on the same page?
Yes, I agree. They asked for input from people on the committees, and they listened and made a few things. For example, you can turn yourself in and without fear of being incarcerated and try to get help. I have heard from some medical people that some of the drugs that people, even though people are on something for a long time, there are some issues. So it's a big bill, and there's always corrections that'll be made in future years. It certainly can be improved.
One of the things I pushed for really hard that didn't get on the bill was a needle access program. Because that serves not only to stem the spread of disease, but also get people in the door to learn about the resources and the services available. If you come to a clinic to get the clean syringe, and you're going to look and see what's available, and you might go away thinking, maybe I should check out those services and help me with my problem.
There is also some abortion legislation that now requires abortion providers to quiz women who want to terminate their pregnancy in order to understand why they wanted an abortion. And Randy, your thoughts on that legislation?
Well, every year we have something from the Center for Arizona Progress about a woman's right to choose make her own healthcare decisions. And this year they decided to be invasive and ask all kinds of questions. The original bill was much more onerous. It got watered down to talk about, the most onerous thing was a woman must put on the sheet why she's having the abortion, or she can decline to answer. Then they had there's a whole litany of medical questions that need to be, did this complication happen or this complication? Those things will be recorded anyway in the medical record. I don't know why they need a separate form for DHS to review. So it's still unnecessary to ask a woman why you're choosing to exercise your constitutional right. But it did get watered down quite a bit and changed through the process.
And Rio Nuevo did okay in this latest round. They got a 10-year extension. The folks behind Rio Nuevo say it's going to bring a lot more money for potential development in downtown Tucson. They will now be around until 2035, provided no one pulls the plug on it before that, which could always happen. But Randy, you voted for this bill?
Yeah, yes. I actually had an amendment that got onto the bill that required any new progress to be to require anything new to go through the JCCR, which is the joint the commission that meets about legislative spending, and the TIF is a state money. So yes, I did support it. I know that there's some contention with the Rio Nuevo way back when it started, but I really believe when you go down to downtown Tucson, you're seeing the benefits of a program that's being well run now.
Downtown Tucson is a lot different than it was 10 years ago, for sure. You supported this legislation as well.
Yes, I did.
And we have a new state dinosaur, the Sonorosaurus. I'm very excited about this. You were one of the sponsors on that, Andrea.
Yes.
What do you love about the Sonorosaurus?
I just support tourism. This is a special place. When people come on vacation here, whether it's for sports or for seeing the Sonorosaurus. I had it on my desk until I had my Red for Ed sign on my desk. And then people come, and then they rent places, and then they buy places, because we do live in an incredibly beautiful place.
Excited about our new state dinosaur, Randy?
Sure. I watched the committee hearing with that young man, Jax, who told his story and how it came to be that he sort of helped this get to the forefront. I think he wrote a letter to the governor or something. But yeah, this is the type of thing we should be doing. Sure.
It's our southern Southern Arizona dinosaur.
Yeah,
They didn't go with the Northern Arizona
Yes,
dinosaur. They went with
yes.
ours.
As long as you don't spend a lot of time doing it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we got big problems that we need to spend more time on, but this type of thing is okay.
I believe there's a model of it at the Desert Museum. I have to get out there and go look at it a little bit more closely.
We should all spend more time at the Desert
I,
Museum. if
I
you ask
agree.
me.
I agree.
That is all the time we have. I want to thank Randy Fries from the State House of Representatives, Andrea D'Alessandro from the State Senate, coming in to talk about what happened here at the legislative session. That is our show for tonight. Thanks to our media partners at Tucson Weekly, Inside Tucson Business, Tucson Local Media, Creative Tucson, and Community Radio KXCI 91.3 FM, where you can hear a radio version of Zona Politics at 5 p.m. on Sunday afternoons. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Zona Politics is made possible with the generous support of the Loft Cinema, Tucson's independent movie theater. The Loft features independent, foreign, and documentary films, cult classics, discussions with filmmakers, and much more, including the Loft Film Fest in November. The Loft is located at 3233 East Speedway Boulevard. Showtimes can be found at loftcinema.org. Support for Zona Politics is provided by Hotel Congress in historic downtown Tucson. More information at hotelcongress.com and 622-8848. The Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce serves the business community in the bilingual, bicultural region of the Arizona-Sonora border and is a proud media partner with Zona Politics. Learn more at TucsonHispanicChamber.org.
All of these young people from the community come together, actually get up and do something.
We can do anything!
I think we've attracted a lot of people that are super passionate.
We're here at the No Ban, No Wall protest.
If you come out of college, you have this experience, you know how things run, you have a huge leg up.
People who have ideas and who are dreamers, you know what I mean, who really want to get themselves out there. I think that they should come here.
Zona Politics is hosted by Tucson Weekly senior writer Jim Ninsel. The program is produced by Jennifer Powers Murphy and Danny Vinnick and edited by Jim Rundle. Special thanks to KXCI, Tucson Weekly, Brink Creative Digital, and all supporters who provide crucial funding for the program. Learn more about Zona Politics at zonapolitics.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter.